Welcome to Tour Talk episode 3.
Thanks for having me.
You're permanently invited, unfortunately. Or fortunately, I think fortunately. I'm enjoying it.
I think it's fun. It's fun.
Yeah, I think we're having a good time.
I mean, what else is going to happen during a worldwide lockdown?
I don't think people were going to expect to have to put up with hearing us talking. So
Yeah, but if they're here, they're choosing that torture. You know what I mean?
yeah, we may have encouraged some people to listen for our own benefit.
I hope people are hearing this and just this is actually what we would do every day anyway. So
Well, I kind of wanted to pick up with that, or as part of this first topic anyway. Last week we started off quite funny talking about lamb curry and everything else, which was a very enjoyable
Delicious.
conversation. Yeah, it was so good. Man.
Oof.
It was so good.
Why are we starting off again on that note, man? You're killing me.
Okay, so on a slightly more serious note, a word that I've kept coming back to during this whole pandemic lockdown thing is patience.
Yeah.
It's something I've revisited quite a lot and have had to kind of talk myself through. And I think especially for the touring industry, because there is no definitive line in the sand or light at the end of the tunnel, we are forever geeing ourselves up, telling ourselves it's going to be okay, it's going to happen. But especially for people like me and you who are inherently and intrinsically impatient and proactive,
Yeah.
that's been a really tough experience for me. And I think you've felt it too. And obviously I feel quite fortunate that me and you have been able to talk quite a lot and we have a lot in common to do with the industry, and we've kind of been able to work through that together. But I can imagine for a lot of people that they haven't had the same kind of experience that we've had of being able to try and deal with it.
I think it's an exercise in self-control.
Yeah.
Because people, even though people have kind of less to do, things are moving at a slower pace because things just aren't operating the same way. You know what I mean? It's not like, it's hard to describe why specifically, but if people are at home, I think they're working on a different pace than if they were in an office and So for me, what I've had to specifically learn how to do is send one email or text versus 11. Normally I would be like, all right, stuff has to get done because everyone's moving so fast that you have to kind of be in this frantic state to keep up. Especially in the music business, it's like if a tour gets offered to you via email, sometimes you have 24 hours to respond, which is that's pretty crazy to think that you have to put all the thought into something like a tour. Sometimes you only have hours to respond. Hey, you got to give me an answer by the end of the day. So I've been trained in my work ethic to be on top of it, kind of when you're scraping by to get stuff done. So now people are like, all right, let's talk by the end of the week, as opposed to I need to hear tomorrow. So because of the uncertainty and everything, so I think it's pulled back people's pace a little bit. So for me, instead of writing 3 emails at 3 a.m., I've now trained myself to be all right, breathe, respond to it tomorrow. It's gonna be fine.
I think what's really interesting for us is that, especially with the touring and music industry, that when you're on one tour, you're already booking and planning the next one because that's how it works. You have to be proactive. You have to keep putting your hand up and trying to secure more work. I think it's just a facet that most self-employed people can relate to, but especially for us, that you just get caught in this cycle of consistently concentrating on the next thing instead of being able to focus on where you're at and what you're doing. And I think part of this whole development patience thing is also learning how to really concentrate on what you're actually doing in the moment and then worrying about stuff in the future when you can actually deal with it.
Yeah. I think the interesting part is kind of everything is leveled out. It's kind of like hitting a reset button, right? So yes, people are kind of booking shows for 2021. But really what they did, the entire music industry basically took what was already booked for 2020 that got canceled and shifted it, right? So it's like you have this head start almost. And I actually have this weird feeling. I think a lot of people are talking like, oh, when things are back to normal or when it's over, I can't wait to keep this like lifestyle or this work, this like thought of pacing yourself. I have a feeling, and I know for myself, I think it's going to be quite the opposite. I think this is a rest period, and then when we hit the ground running, it's going to be like insane, because then now people are looking at 2022. The industry used to be about a year or two ahead, and now you're like 2 or 3 years ahead. So it's a whole different thing. I don't know. I'm actually excited thinking about burning the candle at both ends again. I love it. I do admittedly love that sense of urgency, right? Because I think great things do actually come from that pressure. If you can survive in that atmosphere.
Sure, and it is tough. I think especially with the music and the touring industry, that it is a difficult balance mentally to be able to kind of keep up with that burn, to keep pushing yourself onto the next thing, to keep planning ahead. And I definitely think a lot of people were ready for the break. I mean, we've discussed the whole burnout thing and people taking a rest period before. But this whole semblance of actually learning how to wait for something it's been quite foreign and quite new for me. Like, can you see yourself being able to take that forward and actually utilizing your newfound patience? Because it's been amazing for me to like see you slowly settle into being able to wait for things.
I will apply it to things that affect other people.
Okay.
But I will not relent. Like, for instance, right now I'm writing these demos. I'm writing new songs, and I have set a date in my head of when I want to be done the writing process, to gather instruments from different people, because obviously we can't record in a studio right now, so I am outsourcing a lot of the work, the drums and the bass and the guitar and the pedal steel and stuff. And I've already made fake deadlines that I'm like implementing, right? But what I'm trying to do is not pressure other people and say, hey, I really need this from you by this time. It's more like, all right, this is when I'd like to get the stuff in, but in my head, for when I want to have it all completed, I kind of have a deadline. Because I can't work any other way.
You're creating fake pressure for yourself?
Straight up, yeah, fake pressure. Because at the end of the day, right, like, while music is slightly a competition in terms of sales and popularity, at the end of the day, your only competition is yourself. So I think you have to kind of keep that pressure up. Otherwise, it's very easy to become lazy.
Sure, and I think what you've really realized during this whole period is that for the first time ever, you've actually got a chance to get ahead. For so often, like, you're so busy hitting the next tour, bouncing from idea to idea, and especially what people don't realize, that when it comes to releasing a record and singles and music videos, so much of this stuff gets done just in time. It's never just sat in the bank for 3 months and you're waiting to put it out.
Most of it gets pushed.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, most of it gets pushed back, and you don't even realize that they've set one date and it gets pushed back 2 or 3 times.
Yeah, and so I think especially for you, you've now seen this opportunity to build up a year's worth of material or potential material that you can utilize and actually be ahead of the game for the first time in maybe 20 years.
Yeah, for the first time in my life, I feel like I have sorry, I had a horrendous burp. Rob's gonna isolate that one.
Fuck being poignant ever with you.
I tried to do it really quietly.
There was no.
I tried to do it really.
No.
I tried to do it really quietly, but it didn't work.
Yeah, man.
So I figure I'm just gonna burp when I have to burp.
Yeah.
For the first time ever in 18 or 19 years, I have not had to rely on anyone else but myself, so that pressure has actually allowed me to stockpile. I have a a full demoed record under my belt where I played all the instruments and kind of like did this thing. I have a proper studio album under my belt. And now I'm 15, 20 songs into the writing process for writing more stuff. And then I would imagine by the end of the year, by the beginning of next year, I'm going to start writing on the next thing. So before anyone hears a single thing that I've done, basically, I feel like I'm going to be 3 records ahead, which is really, 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 really nice feeling. Mm-hmm. Instead of being on a tour and thinking just about like the thing I have to do when I get home, writing and putting that pressure on myself, I bought myself some time.
Yeah, I think when I look back at, especially when I was trying to get ahead or like to make ground and to push myself to work hard to kind of work with more bands and on more shows and all that kind of stuff. When I think about the pressure I was putting myself under whilst on tour, so I was trying to be a manager for one band and booking shows and promoting shows whilst being tour with another band on the other side of the world, and like creating that kind of pressure for myself, I now can look back and think, you could have just been a little more patient with that. You could have just concentrated on the one thing, right, and then got home and then done your other thing. So, at least for me, that I agree with you to a point that the whole putting yourself under pressure thing definitely does yield results. Putting yourself under too much pressure, especially in the industry that we're in, where it is so from one thing to the next, and even when you're on one thing, the next thing's already more important. For me, I will definitely be a little more patient and try and enjoy the thing I'm doing, and then let the next thing take care of itself when I get to it.
Right. Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, what's the point of any of this if it isn't fun?
Yeah.
I mean, you might as well just go, you might as well have a job that's not fun. This is supposed to be fun.
For sure.
So I'm embracing that now and having fun with it. Again, and if I don't meet the fake deadline, there's no actual real repercussion. It's just me being like, oh, shit, all right, next week.
I can bring the repercussion. I can do that.
Yeah, I get it. You and Rob are going to hold me to some like ridiculous standard for when it comes to getting this stuff in, but I feel like I've been pretty timely. And again, it's about, I think, truthfully, it's about what affects other people. Again, too, I think like if you're in a band, you know, you also don't realize that like how much your behavior or your timelines or your punctuality affects the other people that you're with in a good or bad way. So it's like in this situation for me now, which is new, is that I'm by myself. So it feels like good to have that pressure's off, but then you have to also hold yourself accountable.
Sure. At least you went off mic for that one.
I tried, yeah. It's like drinking beer before a show. Beer's always tough before the set because it bubbles back up.
Yeah, but you always like having one during, surely.
I like a drink or two during the show for sure. It feels relaxed and good. But beer is tough, man, because if you're moving at all, you're just.
What's the line like with you between doing shows after 1 or 2 drinks and being fine, or maybe being 4, 5, 6 drinks in and being hammered and being terrible? Like, what's it like for you?
I've been pretty hammered. I've done a handful of shows very drunk. And I don't feel like I've had bad shows because of it. I kind of feel like I know there's several lines, right? There's levels to it. Yeah. So ideally, my ideal thing is to have 2 drinks before playing and to have a drink or 2 during the set. And then after, whatever. I think it's all about lines. So like a couple drinks beforehand, it kind of gets rid of the stage fright. And a drink or 2 while you're doing it feels like it keeps you loose. And then I think if you have a couple more before or a couple more during and you can feel drunk but not, just for me personally, to not feel like sloppy.
Yeah.
But the second you get to cross that line of being like blacked out, that's tough, man, because you really just don't know if you're doing good or not.
No.
And I certainly it's been a very long time since I've done multiple shows very drunk.
Can you
If that
remember
makes sense.
being terrible or a reason why you may have had a few too many drinks before going on?
I can personally never remember being terrible because of being drunk.
Okay. Of course you wouldn't.
No, I would tell you if I was terrible. I mean, there's been shows where I definitely think after I shouldn't have been that drunk, but I don't think I've ever really I've never been drunk and been like, oh, I ruined the show from drinking too much.
Yeah, I think that especially the drinking during is more just a kind of relaxing into a surrounding and just enjoying being where you're at and that kind of thing, just having a beer whilst you're on stage. And sure, a beer or two before.
Yeah, I think it keeps it loose. It keeps it loose. It keeps it like all right, this isn't like super stiff. But I think, I've definitely played with people who are too drunk, and they would admit that the show was bad because of what they did. So for me, I've never really felt like I ruined the show. I felt like maybe I was a little looser than I should have been.
Mm-hmm.
But I never put a show in jeopardy. I think that's a very bad idea. I've also played on acid before, a couple different times, that was people really liked it. Mm-hmm. People really loved the experience of watching the band on acid, but personally, I was terrified, like out of my mind, scared because I didn't really know if what I was hearing or experiencing was what other people were hearing or experiencing.
Was there ever any footage of that?
2014 Warped Tour, and it was in Florida. I forget exactly where.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure there's some YouTube of it.
So you've never seen?
I saw some cell phone footage of it then. I mean, basically what happened was we all took acid before the show and got really, really, really high just as our set was happening. And what happened was there was a lot of acid going around the tour at that point, and we had taken it a few days in a row, and this was like in the middle of that happening. It was just the sets were not going very well for us. It was a very tough tour, and kind of word got out amongst the bands that we were going to do this set, like just tripping our balls off. So we did, and it was very funny. It was one of the busier sets that we had on the tour because so many bands started to talk about it that the crowd was mostly other bands watching, and people really loved it. I mean, I thought we took a chance on a bunch of stuff, and it got pretty experimental. But honestly, probably if I looked back at it now, I would think it was terrible.
So my connection pretty much froze whilst you were telling that story. So it was literally like I was on acid listening to you try to tell that story. That was possibly the worst.
That's cool.
Seconds.
Awesome.
But in my head, I've just got that clip from Family Guy, when they get really high and they're playing some show and they think it sounds amazing, really ethereal, and then they're just actually Peter and Lois are just lying on the floor making horrific sounds. Yeah. I feel like that's possibly what it was like then.
No, people definitely said it was cool, but I think we played we had 30 minutes, and I think we played three songs. I mean, they were 10-minute. Yeah. They were explorations for sure. But I always like that anyway, because we were doing 60 shows in a row or 55 shows in a row on Warped Tour. So it's, for me, that's fine. Let's take one and open it up, baby. It won't be the last, I can promise you that.
No, I'm sure. So for anybody in the UK that doesn't know, do you want to tell people what Warped Tour is? Because I feel like it's a proper rites of passage in the US for bands and crew alike.
In the US for sure, but they have it. They've done it in the UK the past few years. They've done it at Ali Pali, Alexandra Palace, and it's a short version of what it is.
Yeah, because Warped Tour, from what I understand, is a brutal excursion for bands.
It's crazy. So it was around for 30 years or 25 years or something like that, and basically it's a traveling circus. It's 100 bands, 700 people on the tour. And basically the tour goes to 52 or 54 shows in 62 days. Mm-hmm. So sorry. It's crazy. It's really, really crazy. And it's in the middle of the summer, right? So it's like June and July, or it's July and August, and it's just insane. I mean, 15-hour drives in between shows, and the bus gets there at 8 in the morning, and there's bands. There's 5 stages, 8 stages, and it's just and it's a festival, and sometimes it's in like these parking lots or stadiums, and it's madness, and it's the hardest possible tour to do. Mm-hmm. It's hard. I mean, every day. Sometimes I remember we did 15 or 16 days in a row, no days off. Yeah, it's crazy. So you get all your meals from catering, and it's really hot, and you kind of have to go from your merch area, which is a mile away from the festival grounds, and it's tough. And if you don't have a big crew, you're loading your own merch and gear across gravel parking lots. I mean, it's crazy. And I did 2 of them.
Mm-hmm. But it really does feel like it's a thing that as a band or as a crew guy from the States that you have to do to get anywhere or to tick it off and to actually
if you get through it and people like you, like if you're a guitar tech and at the end of that tour your band is like likes you, you'll have a job forever.
Yeah.
I mean, it is the most grueling possible tour there ever was in the States, and the camaraderie, it's obviously, I'm not actually comparing it to war, but it feels when you meet people from it, you're like, oh my God, the summer of 2011, I was there. I saw that shit.
Yeah.
I was there. We did that. We did it together. And you do kind of get this respect from people who are, it's the ultimate like grinding it out tour.
Yeah.
So there is this mutual respect when you meet people who have done it. And it launched the careers of a lot of people. Not mine, but a lot of people. Before we wrap, I wanted to talk to you because you've been on this side of the business a bunch. Production. Uh-huh. So in the chain of events, I think this is how I see it. Budgets will be smaller for a couple years. Rooms will be smaller. Everything's going to be cut back. So if you're a band that relies heavily on production, where does that leave you? Bands like Slipknot and bands like Ghost and bands like Kiss. If you strip the production away from those shows, I feel like you're not really left with a whole lot of meat to chew on.
Yeah, I think for a lot of those bands, though, they grew up and learned their thing playing in clubs to nobody or to few people and building it that way. So I think that at least they have done it might have been a long time for somebody like Kiss or something. It's been a long time since they've done that. So I think they can fall back on that. They've been there. They've done the hard yard. So for real bands like that who've just gone out and just road hogged it until they've built their own success and built their show on the back of that, then maybe stripping it back. I mean, for me, could you imagine if Slipknot just did 10 nights in a club with like 1,500 people and you could just go see them low production, low ceiling room, and it just blow your face off? Would you not go and see that show?
Yeah, I've purposely at 930 Club, because of the exclusivity of that club, every once in a while they have like Sinead O'Connor played there, ZZ Top played there, the Bad Brains played there. I mean, just you see crazy stuff there. And it's 1,100 people, and the ticket's $100, and they do a couple nights. I love those shows, and I remember right when Clutch was really starting to take off, they did a 2 or 3 night stand, a 2-night stand tour where they did like 2 nights in DC, 2 nights in New York, 2 nights in Boston, and the clubs were half capacity. It was awesome. Yeah. It was incredible. It's special.
So to answer your question, I think that, they will have to roll back production. I think it will separate the men from the boys. I think there will be bands who will be able to just go out there and be like, we're just a band. That's all that really matters. And the bands that can really just perform as themselves will just go out and smash it.
Smash it.
I think it's a shame because as much as I do like it raw and full on and just a band on stage playing and that's the focal point, the Ghost show I thought is awesome. It's like going to theatre. There's a whole storyline to it, and when somebody thinks that much about the set and the lighting and everything that goes with it, and I know I probably overanalyze it more than most people, but there will be like the final song of the Ghost show that I saw. Like the lighting was like rainbow lighting, like it was just like pure disco fun at the end. I just thought that was just like an amazing touch to put at the end of like a show and have a big
Right.
party. So whether stuff like that will be missing because of budget or whatever, I think that's a shame, but at least we'll get back to that.
Right, right. And maybe those bands are going to do less stops. Maybe. I don't know really how it's going to look. I think it's going to be really interesting, but I am looking forward to seeing some of these bands that at the heart of what they do. They're like a tough band. And you're going to see that in a 500 or 1,000 cap room, and I think it's going to be pretty inspiring.
I mean, maybe there's something they can do with the space that there will inevitably be at these more socially distant shows, or like less people in bigger rooms,
Right.
and maybe there's a spot for somebody to be creative with something like that. I mean, I haven't actually really thought about the actual production of a show for too much because I've spent too much time rearranging shows that were meant to happen to dates that I don't even know they're going to happen, and
Right, right.
from a mental point, committing to stuff like that just would possibly leave me more stuff to get down about if I have to keep rearranging again.
Yeah. But maybe it forces smaller bands to think about production more because now they're going to be competing at these clubs with bigger bands that have real production.
Yeah, I mean, this is the thing that it's going to be so busy when shows are allowed. Like, it is going to be really competitive. So I think,
Oh my God, yeah. I don't think it's going to be as competitive as people are. This is my take on it. I don't think it's going to be as competitive. I think there's going to be so much work to go around. I mean, remember Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday night shows used to be harder to sell?
mm-hmm.
You know, you sell less tickets? Not anymore, buddy.
No.
That Monday night show is going to be fucking rammed.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I think it is going to be more competitive because I've had the privilege of being involved in trying to rearrange shows like in advance, and it's booked. It's busy. Like even like into 2022, it's starting to get busy. So for you, if you were going to go out and do a show, like how would you approach it?
I think I'm thinking more now about how to do some great production with less, if that makes sense. So how can we utilize the lighting rig that's already in the club? How can we get the most out of a backdrop? How can we go into a lighting situation where we can't travel with a lighting guy, but we could tell the guy at the club, hey, here's a few cues. You know, I'm starting to think like that. How do we make the most out of the situation? How do we make the most out of the situation where people can... There's going to be a lot of that.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
trying to squeeze that dollar. So if I could give the lighting guy at the club $50 or $100 and say, hey man, here's the set list at these songs, we want this to happen, or the intro or the outro. I think by making the intro and the outro of the set really mesmerizing, or the production is tweaked a bit, then I think you can kind of taper it from there, if that makes sense. So I'm just thinking now about how to get the most out of a tour, because I know the money is going to be less. There's going to be less money. So how do we get the most out of it?
Sure. I mean, even in terms of like stuff that's on stage, like, do you like seeing a band that's got like walls of amps? Do you like seeing bands that have got like nothing on stage and like?
I like it in the middle. I like it in the middle, right? So like, I don't love fake walls of amps, right? That's not for me. I mean, there's a few bands that I love their big production. AC/DC's production's amazing.
Yeah, but that shit's all on.
Rush, 100%. Rush also incredible stage production, very loud, very real. People tell me that Rammstein has their show is just crazy. It's amazing. I'm into all that. I like it. I think it's great, especially when you're playing stadiums and venues like that. I think you really need it. More traditionally, I like when a band has the gear that they actually use.
Yep.
It's actually making noise, and the stage looks full, and the lighting is good. I think good lighting goes a long way. I don't think you always need pyrotechnics and you always need smoke machines and all this shit. I think if you have good lighting and the lighting guy is cueing to the music, I think a few stacks of lights can go a really long way.
Yeah, big time.
So,
Big time. I think people, guys like lighting guys, are the ones who are going to end up picking up 2 or 3 bands on the same tour, because I feel like this is where bands' budgets
100%.
are going to have to go further, and these guys who've stayed in the industry and managed to
100%.
ride it out could end up making double, triple bubble on shows. I mean, I know that some of them used to do it anyway, but I feel like now this is where bands are really going to try and make their budget go further by sharing stuff like that.
yeah. But I think that's okay. I think we're all going to tough it out together.
great.
There is a camaraderie. There is a camaraderie, right, amongst bands, especially when you're on tour together, that you're going to make it work. If it doesn't mess with the headliner's flow of production, why not, right? We've done it with sound guys a million times. Hey, man, we're on this tour together. I'll give you this amount every night to mix us. And then by the third show, because they're great sound people, they know what they're doing. I think it's going to be a tough couple of years. And I think when we emerge from those couple of years, it's going to be the golden age of live shows. I think it's going to be incredible.
Just whilst we're on sound guys and light guys, I don't think people really realize that, like, no matter what you do on stage as a band, unless your sound guy is actually mixing it the way that you guys are interpreting it and want
everything.
people to hear it, and the lighting guy's lighting you up and making people, like, you're an actual visual thing for people, that, like, how as someone in a band do you feel about, like, a sound guy and a lighting guy and, like, the role they have?
The sound guy is the other member of the band, right? You could be the best band in the world. I've seen it. I've seen amazing bands with bad sound guys. Sound guy's everything. It's the person that's representing your sound to the audience. There is no show without a sound guy.
Yeah.
If you don't make it a point to find the sound guy after every show, they're usually there cleaning up for a half hour at the board or 20 minutes at the board. Go find that guy and thank him. They're the most underappreciated dudes on the tour. Because they're not like the techs. Like, even the drum techs and guitar techs, people are asking them for picks and set lists, right? The sound guy is everything. If you see a sound guy at a show and it was a good show, thank him for that.
The sound guy only gets interaction with people when people think it sounds shit. That's the only time people turn to the desk and, like, they give them
and that's
shit.
That's also the worst thing you can do. Yeah, don't tell the sound guy it sounds like shit, because you don't know what he's dealing with in the room. You don't know the gear of the club. You don't know if shit's blown. You don't know. I mean, just fuck off. I hate when people do that.
So just be nice.
I went and told your sound guy that the mix was weird. Yeah, I told the sound guy the mix was weird. Hey, thanks, dude. Who are you? Yeah, like, just crazy. Anyway, sound guy, unsung hero. Love the sound guy.
Fair enough. I think that's a good point to wrap it for today.
Amazing.
We've made it through another episode of Tour Talk. Thank you for tuning in to the latest episode of Tour Talk. As always, you can find us across the socials at Tour Talk Pod. That's Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and Patreon too. Peace!